You selected the PowerPoint presentation for topic 3, the tender process, part of the overall course, building industry contracts. And in here we're talking about the quite separate considerations of choosing the form of contract, but the degree of competition or negotiation that's required in builder selection. Types of contract competition or negotiation, or sometimes a combination of both, that can be used to select a builder without affecting the risk-bearing nature of the particular form of contract entered into. Before we go too far, let's just summarise some of the course requirements. If you've got any questions or need assistance, refer to the front page of the Moodle. Anything that you can't answer there or need assistance during the term, you can email me directly or phone me or post any questions to the forum. You can also post discussions and questions onto the student forum as well. There'll be news posted and additional material throughout the period of this course. Be clear about the assignment requirements and submissions, and also dates for assessments considerations. Remember also, this PowerPoint presentation is not a substitute for the study guide and is merely a summary of the study guide contents. So the tendering process, it's a competitive process used to obtain and usually agree upon a price for completing proposed works. And in this case, we're talking about construction works. Contractors and builders are motivated to tender for the projects only if they consider it to be fair, clearly stated, and easy to follow. I consider the Australian Standard Code of Tendering, AS 4120, a useful document, and it may be useful to yourselves throughout this subject. It deals with the matters such as ownership of tender documents, deposits of the documents, the need for tenderers to properly inform themselves of site inspections and information provided. And there's also discussion in there, which we'll go through too, on ambiguities, submission of tenders, acceptance and notification procedures. There are 3 methods of selecting a contractor. One of them is open tendering, and this is normally achieved by advertising publicly, and that can either be online or in some type of print media, a newspaper, that type of thing, and states all the conditions that need to be fulfilled by applying contractors and companies that will be tendering. So invited or selective tendering, and this is where the building owner or consultants are shortlisted, and they're considered suitable for a project in hand, and they're invited to tender. And from this way, it's a more of a selective group rather than going out to the whole public. This method of selection is negotiated contracts. The building owner or contractor is selected, singly selected, and they're considered suitable for the work without any prior agreement, price or time, that type of thing. They're usually selected as a result of many reasons, which may be that the builder's known to the building owner, the builder has a considerable expertise in erecting a certain type of building, there's some type of financial or business relationship involved, or the builder might be an associated company with the client or building owner. Now there's advantages and disadvantages with a lot of these forms of selecting a contractor also. And just briefly, I mean, with negotiation, there's usually a certain amount of proven financial capacity and reliability that's already known. The particular type of construction method is secure. There might be some type of time saving because you don't have to go through that whole tender process. But again, with negotiation, there's several negative elements, such as really open, competitive pricing nature of the selection process compared with the other forms of builder selection. Invited or selected, I always consider it has the best of both worlds, both negotiation and open tender, because There's an element already of you know a certain amount about the contractors, you know their capacity, you know their competitive nature, and so you can already derive a small group of these which will be suitable for your particular project. Whereas open tender has many advantages on the competitive price point of view, but there's often some issues associated with trying to weed through who are these people that have priced, and are they really good value, and what is their reputation? Can they do the job, and how reliable are they? As I've said with open tendering, I've got a small matrix here. So you can be aware that the length of time of the tender when it's open can be considerable. The size, complexity, level of documentation, number of site visits, presentations and so forth all need to be considered with an open tender. And also deciding the number of tenderers will be an issue if it's a specialty project, or otherwise if there's unavailable or availability of resources. In the tender administration, there's a number of issues that really need to be considered. That is the legal and ethical requirements, making sure that all the documents that have been sent to all tenderers is the same, that all tenderers are treated the same in fairness as well. Providing that information to tenderers, is it on time? Do they have enough time for tendering? The detail of the information being sent out, the submission of the tenders, that those details are clear, the dates, the place, the requirements of that tender is very clear. The opening of the tenders as well, that's a fair process, and that it's conducted in a manner which is not impartial to any of them, as well as the tenders are recorded, and notification of tender results. That's fair for everyone. Once the evaluation process has taken place, the people, contractors often put in a lot of work with tenders, and it's fair to report back to them and let them know how they went, whether they're successful or unsuccessful. Evaluation process, once you've got the tenders have all been received, a matter of looking at the prices, looking at the components of the price, do they match up each other? The issues associated with workplace health and safety, previous experience, licensing, that type of thing. The checking of the tenders to ensure that there's consistency and everything that was asked for is there. Exceptional prices, so prices that are either too high, too low, irregular with the marketplace. Why is that? Is there a reason for that? And any qualifications or ambiguities. So something in there which has been missed out, or something in there which people have had to qualify because they can't do that particular type of work, or they can't source that particular type of material or product at that time. And so it could be considered a non-conforming tender, but in the evaluation process also, we might consider that overall with all the tenderers and then ask the same question to everybody. In the tender analysis, I usually have a simple dot point, which I've put on the slide here. Number of items which I look at. One of them is obviously the price, and that to a lot of people is the most important aspect of getting the tenders in. And unfortunately, sometimes it's what the client will go for in the end as well. But having said that, these other items here, which I've stated, depending on how you rank those, and depending on what the project is going to be, I find them to be really important. Quite often can override the price. So the technical, past performance, if the contractor really doesn't finish on time, if there's a lot of dispute in there, if there's issues with a lot of variations and claims, or wanting to stop work, if the work, there's a lot of reworks, and generally there's a lot of disharmony on projects because of and confrontation because of quality issues all the time as well. So I think all these are very important to consider in the tender analysis overall. So if we look at that as a look at those dot points as a say a working template. I've produced an evaluation sort of spreadsheet here, where then you can consider all those points which are important to you on the project. So their experience, their quality management, technical expertise, workplace health and safety, and the price. And from each of those, you can start ranking then from a 1 to 5 or scale to see how that builder rates overall, not just price. And that will assist you further in the selection process. So that ranking 1 to 5 on experience, that's how important you believe that is for this particular project. Placing of the contract, good practice really requires a recommendation report where you've considered all the tenderers, all the information that's come in, and you've made a judgment and a recommendation on who is the best tenderer for the project. It's extremely good practice, as I said earlier, to notify all unsuccessful bidders that have spent a lot of time putting their tenders together. A letter of intent to the successful tenderer, and be very clear in that letter about contract dates, site possession, those type of things. You're almost highlighting some of those issues in the contract, and I think that's very important to do in that initial discussion. As I've said, recommendations, making that recommendation report, that's going to go back to the client, and that's really important. It needs to be a very easy to understand, clear, logical, with a good case for the acceptance of the tenderer. That once you've done the evaluation, it's clear. You need to ensure that it gives all the information, including all the tenderers received, any discussions that you would have had with tenderers after they've submitted, their details such as the name of the tenderers, tenderer sum, whether they're valid, due date received, that type of thing. Again, going through the rates, the estimate and tender comparison, as I showed something similar on that previous slide there, and the overall recommendation. The last stage of the tender process is the acceptance, and that includes the awarding of the contract. The acceptance here is to be unconditional and really formalising the contract, so making any of those changes that might have been agreed during tender, or any of the time frames, material, resources, issues that became apparent during that tender through either that tenderer, the successful tenderer, or the other tenderers, or also any addendas that were introduced during the tender, ensuring all the contract documents are now complete and represent any of these changes. To the end of this topic presentation now, and it's a good opportunity to go back, read through the study guide, which has a lot more detail, refer to the subject text where you need to, and also work through the workbook activities as you're doing this topic. As I said when we started the presentation, if you've got any questions, post them either to the group or email me directly, the lecturer, or post them in the question and answers on Moodle.